Imagine this. You are standing amidst the gaslit haze of Madison Square Garden in the year 1898. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and the murmur of a skeptical crowd, a gathering of the era's finest minds, wealthy investors, and curious onlookers who have come to witness a spectacle they believe to be nothing more than a magician's trick. In the center of a large indoor tank filled with water floats a small iron-hulled boat, seemingly lifeless, a mere toy in the eyes of the uninitiated. But the man standing at the controls is no magician, nor is he a mere entertainer. He is Nikola Tesla, a figure who seems to have stepped out of the future to drag the present kicking and screaming into a new age of electromagnetic mastery. He does not touch the boat. He does not shout commands. Instead, he manipulates a series of levers and switches on a boxy apparatus, and the boat obeys. It starts, stops, turns, and flashes its lights, responding with an eerie, ghost-like precision to invisible commands slicing through the ether. To the onlookers, this is sorcery or telepathy. To Tesla, it is the birth of the Teleautomaton, the first step toward a race of robots that would one day perform the labor of humanity. Most of Nikola Tesla's inventions were not merely mechanical improvements on existing devices. They were fundamental shifts in how we perceive the fabric of reality, tapping into the very energies that govern the stars and the microscopic vibrations of matter. When we analyze the Teleautomaton, we are not looking at a simple remote-controlled boat. We are witnessing the first practical application of a technology that utilizes the fundamental principles of resonance and frequency to bridge the gap between human will and mechanical action without a physical medium. Tesla understood, perhaps more deeply than anyone before or since, that the universe is composed of energy, frequency, and vibration. By tuning his transmitter and receiver to a specific frequency, he created a sympathetic link, a harmonic bond between the controller and the automaton, similar to how two tuning forks of the same pitch will resonate together even when separated by distance. This was not just engineering. It was a manipulation of the fundamental laws of nature, a harnessing of the luminiferous ether that scientists of the time were still debating. You might ask yourself, how could a simple boat change the trajectory of human history? Consider the context of the late 19th century. The world was dominated by heavy gears, steam, and direct physical connection. If you wanted a machine to move, you pushed it, pulled it, or connected it with a belt or a chain. Action at a distance was the realm of the occult. Tesla's boat shattered this paradigm. He introduced the concept of the logic gate, the fundamental building block of modern computing, decades before the silicon chip was even a dream. Within the hull of that small vessel lay a complex system of coherers, devices that could detect radio waves and convert them into mechanical action. This was the ancestor of the transistor, the grandfather of the microprocessor, hidden inside a demonstration that the press labeled a devil's automaton. By encoding instructions into bursts of radio waves, Tesla was essentially writing the first code, programming the physical world to respond to binary inputs, signal on, signal off. The implications of this technology extend far beyond the mere novelty of a remote-controlled toy. Tesla envisioned the teleautomaton as the progenitor of a burrowing race of machines, mechanical men that would not only fight wars, making conflict too terrible to endure, but would eventually liberate humanity from the drudgery of survival. He saw a future where the human mind was free to pursue higher knowledge, while the borrowed mind of the machine handled the mundane. This perspective requires us to look at the teleautomaton not as a gadget, but as an artificial organism. Tesla himself referred to it as having a borrowed mind. He argued that the boat behaved exactly like a human being, receiving stimuli from the environment, in this case his radio signals, and reacting accordingly. This suggests a profound philosophical stance that biological life and mechanical life are governed by the same universal principles of stimulus and response, energy and vibration. If you strip away the flesh and blood, are we not all just biological automatons responding to the frequencies of our environment? This demonstration at Madison Square Garden was a manifestation of Tesla's obsession with the wireless transmission of energy and information. While his rival Marconi was struggling to send simple Morse code dots and dashes across distances, Tesla was already controlling complex machinery with secure multi-frequency signals. He utilized a method of tuning that prevented interference, a concept that underpins the spread spectrum technology used in today's Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It is astounding to realize that the smartphone in your pocket, communicating wirelessly with the router in your home, traces its lineage directly back to that iron-hulled boat floating in a tank in 1898. The invisible threads that connect our modern world, the global internet, satellite communications, the drone fleets, were spun by Tesla in that moment. He was pulling the strings of the universe, demonstrating that space is not an empty void, but a medium capable of carrying intelligence, power, and command. However, the world was not ready for such a leap. The scientific community and the military elite failed to grasp the magnitude of what Tesla was offering. They saw a torpedo that could be steered, a weapon of war, but they missed the larger picture of robotics and automation. Tesla, frustrated by this myopia, insisted that his teleautomaton was not a weapon, but a robot in the truest sense, a machine capable of acting with a degree of autonomy. He proposed that these machines could eventually possess their own intelligence, evolving beyond simple remote control to become self-sustaining entities. This aligns with his broader cosmological view that the universe is a masterpiece of order and mechanics. If the planets revolve according to precise laws of gravity and momentum, why should a machine not operate by similar immutable laws of electromagnetism? The Teleautomaton was a microcosm of the solar system, a small body obeying the invisible gravitational pull of its creator's will, mediated by the electromagnetic field. To truly appreciate the genius of the Teleautomaton, one must understand the complexity of the coherer mechanism Tesla employed. A coherer is a tube filled with metal filings that are normally loosely packed and conduct electricity poorly. When a radio wave hits the tube, the filings align or cohere, becoming conductive and allowing a current to pass through, which then triggers a relay to steer the boat. Once the signal ceases, the filings must be decohered or shaken loose to reset the device for the next command. Tesla devised an ingenious automatic tapping mechanism to reset the coherer instantly after each signal, allowing for rapid sequential commands. This cycle of coherence and decoherence creates a rhythm, a frequency of operation that mirrors the biological cycles of contraction and relaxation in muscle tissue. It is a vibration of information, a pulse of logic coursing through the copper veins of the machine. Furthermore, Tesla did not stop at simple control. He implemented a form of rudimentary encryption. He knew that if radio control were to be used in war or industry, it could be jammed or hijacked by an enemy. To counter this, he designed the system to respond only to a specific combination of frequencies, a harmonic chord of radio waves rather than a single note. This concept of security through selectivity is the bedrock of modern cybersecurity. It reveals Tesla's foresight. He was not just inventing a machine, he was anticipating the countermeasures that would be used against it and solving problems that wouldn't exist for another half-century. He was playing four-dimensional chess with the laws of physics, while his contemporaries were still learning the rules of the game. The skepticism he faced was rooted in a materialist view of the world that Tesla constantly sought to transcend. To the Victorian mind, reality was what you could touch. To Tesla, reality was the invisible dance of forces that dictated the form of the tangible. The Teleautomaton was his attempt to make the invisible visible, to show that the empty air between the transmitter and the receiver was alive with potential. He was trying to teach humanity that we are immersed in an ocean of energy, and that by understanding the frequencies of this ocean, we can command the physical world without lifting a finger. The boat was a physical avatar of this philosophy, a testament to the power of the mind extended through the medium of the ether. As we delve deeper into the mechanics and the philosophy behind this invention, we begin to see that Tesla was addressing the fundamental question of what it means to be alive. If a machine can perceive a signal, process it, and act upon it with purpose, does it possess a form of consciousness? Tesla believed that even human beings are merely meat machines, responding to external stimuli in a predetermined way. By creating the Teleautomaton, he was essentially building a simplified model of the human organism, stripping away the biological complexity to reveal the underlying electrical nature of life. This perspective is both terrifying and liberating. It suggests that if we can understand the frequencies that drive the machine, we can understand the frequencies that drive ourselves. We are all transceivers, constantly broadcasting and receiving signals, vibrating in the vast electromagnetic web of the universe. The legacy of the Teleautomaton is not just in the drones that fly over our heads or the rovers exploring Mars. It is in the very way we interact with our environment. Every time you change the channel on your television, every time you unlock your car from a distance, you are reenacting that moment in Madison Square Garden. You are utilizing the invisible link, the vibration of the ether that Tesla tamed. But there is more to this story, deeper layers of complexity involving the specific circuits, the nature of the art of telautomatics, and the vision Tesla had for a world where machines did not just obey, but thought. The bridge between the 19th century boat and the 21st century AI is paved with Tesla's forgotten patents and misunderstood theories. To fully grasp the magnitude of the Teleautomaton, one must venture beyond the spectacle of the moving boat and dive into the intricate nervous system Tesla constructed within its iron shell. This was not merely a system of pulleys and gears triggered by a spark. It was the physical embodiment of a new art Tesla termed telautomatics. The core of this technology lay in the concept of individualization, a principle that relies heavily on the laws of resonance and frequency. In the chaotic soup of electromagnetic noise that permeates the atmosphere, from lightning strikes to other electrical experiments, Tesla had to ensure that his boat would listen to him and him alone. This required a mastery of tuning that was decades ahead of its time. He utilized tuned resonant circuits consisting of capacitors and inductors which would only oscillate when struck by a radio wave of a precise frequency. Just as a wine glass will only shatter when a singer hits the exact resonant note, the Teleautomaton's internal coherer would only close the gate and allow current to flow when it received the specific harmonic signature broadcast by Tesla's transmitter. This brings us to the realization that Tesla was effectively building the world's first logic gates, the fundamental AND mechanism that underpins all modern computing. In his advanced designs, he employed two or more different frequencies. The machine was designed so that action would only occur if frequency A and frequency B were detected simultaneously or in a specific sequence. This is the birth of the logical AND gate. If input A is true and input B is true, then the output is true. By manipulating these frequencies, Tesla was not just steering a vessel, he was sending binary data packets through the ether. He was programming the physical world. When you consider the complexity of modern encryption and data transfer, realize that the seed was planted here, in the concept that information could be segmented, layered, and filtered through the selective properties of electromagnetic resonance. The boat was a floating computer, calculating its own movement based on wireless inputs. But let us push deeper into the philosophy of the machine. Tesla did not view the Teleautomaton as a separate entity from the universe. He saw it as a mimicry of life itself. He was obsessed with the idea that all biological beings, humans included, are merely meat machines responding to external stimuli. In his seminal essay, The Problem of Increasing Human Energy, he postulated that all human movement and thought are the result of external impressions striking our sensory organs, our eyes, ears, and skin, which then trigger a response in the brain, much like the radio waves striking the coherer trigger, the relays in the boat. By building the Teleautomaton, Tesla was trying to prove a materialistic yet spiritual point, that the mind can be simulated. If he could build a machine that possessed a borrowed mind, his own mind, transmitted through the air, then perhaps the human mind itself is just a receiver for a greater cosmic intelligence. This aligns with his famous statement, "My brain is only a receiver. In the universe there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration." The Teleautomaton was the proof of concept for this cosmic connection. The mechanics of the device further illustrate this biological mimicry. Inside the hull, there was a rotating disc, a distributor, which functioned remarkably like a primitive brain or a clockwork sequencer. As the coherer received a signal, it would actuate a lever that moved the disc one step. Each step of the disc corresponded to a different function: rudder right, rudder left, stop, lights on. This sequential processing is analogous to how our own neurons fire in sequence to produce complex motor movements. Tesla was engineering a mechanical nervous system. The energy that powered the movement came from onboard batteries, the metabolism of the boat, but the direction, the will, came from the external signal. This creates a fascinating duality. The machine has the potential for power, the battery, but lacks the direction, the signal. Is this not the state of humanity without knowledge? We have the energy to act, but without the tuning to the frequencies of truth or higher understanding, we drift aimlessly. Tesla's boat was a metaphor for the enlightened human, acting in perfect synchronicity with the will of the Creator. You must also consider the environment in which this operated, the luminiferous ether. While modern science has largely discarded the Victorian concept of the ether in favor of relativistic fields, Tesla's understanding of it was functional and profound. He believed the ether was a medium that behaved like a fluid, capable of transmitting longitudinal waves, compressions and rarefactions of the medium itself, instantaneously. When he operated the Teleautomaton, he wasn't just shooting darts of radio waves. He visualized himself compressing the medium, creating a pressure wave that the boat would feel regardless of obstacles. This is why he was so confident that his telautomatics could eventually be used to control machines on the other side of the Earth or even on other planets. He was operating on a scale of planetary resonance. He envisioned a world where the entire globe was a conductive circuit, where a controller in New York could guide a tractor in Australia or a flying machine over the Atlantic simply by exciting the Earth's electric charge at the correct frequency. Despite the brilliance of the invention, the military and financial powers of the day were myopic. The U.S. Navy, to whom Tesla offered the technology, rejected it. They cited the complexity and the perceived fragility of the delicate coherer mechanism. They could not understand how a system of loose metal filings in a glass tube could survive the shock of battle. They failed to see that this was a prototype, a first draft of a technology that would eventually guide intercontinental ballistic missiles. Tesla was furious. He knew that he had handed them the philosopher's stone of warfare, the ability to strike without risk, and they had tossed it aside as a parlor trick. This rejection fueled Tesla's retreat into more esoteric and grandiose projects. He realized that to convince the world, he didn't just need to move a boat, he needed to shake the earth. This led him directly toward the construction of Wardenclyffe Tower, a gigantic magnifying transmitter designed to do for the whole world what his small remote control box did for the boat: transmit not just information, but raw power wirelessly. The Teleautomaton thus stands as a crucial bridge in Tesla's career. It links his earlier work in high-frequency alternating currents, the Tesla coil, with his later, more ambitious planetary engineering projects. It was the moment he moved from being a master of electricity to a master of information. He realized that energy and information are two sides of the same coin. Both are vibrations. A high-frequency signal can carry a voice, a command, or enough power to light a bulb. The only difference is the amplitude and the modulation. In the hull of that small boat, Tesla synthesized these concepts. He created a microcosm of his wireless world system. The boat was the first receiver. The world was meant to be the second. Furthermore, we must analyze the security aspect of the Teleautomaton in the context of frequency hopping. Tesla was arguably the father of spread-spectrum communications. He knew that a single frequency could be jammed by a simple noise generator, a spark gap transmitter screaming static on the same channel. To counter this, he designed systems that would require a complex chord of frequencies. Imagine a lock that requires 3 keys to be turned simultaneously. Even if an enemy jams one frequency, the lock remains secure because the other keys are missing. This is the secret he offered, a method of unassailable communication. It is a tragedy of history that this patent lay largely dormant until it was reinvented by Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil during World War II for torpedo guidance, using a piano roll mechanism to hop frequencies. Tesla had already solved this problem in his mind and in his patents 50 years prior, engaging in a silent dialogue with the future, waiting for the rest of humanity to tune into his station. When we look at the internal components of the Teleautomaton, we also see the precursor to the transistor in the form of the relay. The coherer would detect the weak radio signal, a mere whisper of energy, and use it to trigger a battery-powered relay that released a strong current to the motor. This principle of amplification, using a small signal to control a large energy flow, is the definition of active electronics. Before this, electrical engineering was mostly passive. Wires conducted, resistors resisted. Tesla introduced the active element, the switch that decides. This decision-making capability is what separates a tool from a robot. A hammer is a tool. It does exactly what your hand does. The Teleautomaton was a robot. It took a suggestion from the hand and interpreted it through its own internal logic circuits to produce an action. It introduced a layer of abstraction between the operator and the work, a layer that has since grown into the vast cloud computing networks and AI algorithms that manage our lives today. The tele in telautomatics means distance, but for Tesla, distance was an illusion. In the realm of high-frequency electricity, everything is connected. The vibration of the transmitter is instantly felt by the receiver because they are part of the same electromagnetic continuum. By manipulating the boat, Tesla was demonstrating that separation is a fallacy of the senses. In the energetic reality, the operator and the machine are one system, linked by the invisible geometry of the field. This brings us to a haunting realization. If Tesla could control a boat with his mind, and if he believed the universe operates on these same principles, then are we as individuals truly autonomous? Or are we too floating in a tank, responding to the invisible signals of cosmic forces, gravity, solar radiation, and the Earth's magnetic field, believing we are steering ourselves when in fact we are being guided by the great transmitter of nature? The Teleautomaton asks us to question the source of our own agency. Tesla's vision did not drown in that water tank at Madison Square Garden. Rather, it ascended. While the audience marveled at a toy boat, Tesla was already calculating the trajectories of aerial torpedoes and dirigibles. He recognized that the medium of water was too viscous, too resistant for the speeds he envisioned. The ether of the air was the true domain of the Teleautomaton. In his mind, the boat was merely a proof of concept for a much grander design, the complete automation of warfare and industry through the air. He explicitly stated in his writings that this technology would lead to aerial warships capable of destroying civilization or, paradoxically, enforcing a permanent peace. This brings us to the terrifying prescience of his work. You are living in the age of the drone, the unmanned aerial vehicle that patrols the skies of foreign lands, controlled by operators thousands of miles away in air-conditioned bunkers. Tesla predicted this reality with chilling accuracy over a century ago. He foresaw a war of the machines, where humans would no longer need to slaughter one another. Instead, our mechanical avatars, built of iron and copper, would fight out our disputes until the economic cost became too high to sustain. He envisioned the Teleautomaton as a deterrent, a weapon so precise and so devastating that it would make war mathematically impossible. However, the leap from a remote-controlled boat to a global system of robotics required a power source that batteries could not provide. This is where the Teleautomaton merges with Tesla's world wireless system. The batteries in the 1898 boat were a limitation, a temporary crutch. Tesla's ultimate goal was to transmit not just the control signal, but the motive power itself through the air. Imagine a drone that never needs to land to recharge, a robot that operates indefinitely, drawing its energy directly from the standing waves of the Earth's electromagnetic field. This was the purpose of Wardenclyffe Tower. It was to be the giant transmitter, the brain of the world, sending out power and control signals to millions of teleautomatons operating globally. The boat in the tank was a receiver. The Wardenclyffe Tower was the transmitter. The failure of Wardenclyffe due to funding issues is not just a loss of free energy. It was the abortion of the first global robotic network. We effectively delayed the true Internet of Things by 100 years. When you analyze the patent for the Teleautomaton, U.S. Patent 613809, you realize the language is incredibly broad. It does not strictly define a boat. It describes a method of an apparatus for controlling mechanism of moving vessels or vehicles. Tesla carefully worded it to cover any device moving through any medium, water, air, or earth. This legal and technical foresight establishes him as the father of systems engineering. He was not just inventing a gadget, he was inventing a protocol. The patent describes the synchronization of the transmitter and receiver in a way that parallels the TCP/IP protocols of the modern Internet. It is a system of handshakes, of verifications, ensuring that the message sent is the message received. This is the essence of cybernetics, the study of control and communication in the animal and the machine. Tesla was the first cyberneticist, treating the machine as a closed loop of information and action. But let us go further into the artificial intelligence aspect of his claims. Tesla often spoke of his teleautomatons as having intelligence. While they did not have silicon brains, they possessed discriminating capability. By using multiple tuned circuits, the machine could decide which action to take based on the complex input it received. He even proposed that these machines could eventually learn. In later years, he discussed the idea of machines that could react to their environment independently, without a human operator, true autonomy. He suggested that if a machine were equipped with sensors and a complex enough internal circuitry, it would inevitably develop a personality based on its unique experiences and the specific way its circuits degraded or evolved over time. This is a profound materialist argument, that personality and consciousness are merely the sum total of electrical pathways and memory storage. If you build the circuit complex enough, the ghost in the machine appears inevitably. There is a metaphysical dimension to this technology that must not be ignored. Tesla believed that the universe itself is a grand teleautomaton, a machine of infinite complexity operating on the laws of mechanics and vibration. By tapping into these laws, he wasn't violating nature. He was harmonizing with it. The art of telautomatics was, to him, a spiritual practice. It was the act of extending the human will into the inanimate world, breathing life into clay, or in this case, iron and copper. This parallels the ancient myths of creation, where a god speaks a word and matter forms. Tesla's word was the radio signal, and the matter was the boat. He was playing the role of a demiurge, organizing chaos into order through the application of frequency. This is why he was so deeply offended when people called it a trick. To him, it was a revelation of the divine architecture of the cosmos. Consider the implications of resonance in this control systems. For the teleautomaton to work, the receiver must be perfectly resonant with the transmitter. If the boat is out of tune, it sits lifeless in the water. This is a powerful analogy for biological life. If our bodies and brains are receivers of cosmic consciousness, as Tesla suggested, then illness, confusion, and failure are simply states of being out of tune. We are experiencing destructive interference. The goal of life, then, like the goal of the teleautomaton, is to maintain perfect resonance with the source signal. Tesla's technology teaches us that connection requires alignment. You cannot receive the signal if your internal capacitance and inductance are not balanced. The technical requirements of the machine mirror the spiritual requirements of the human. In the modern era, we have taken Tesla's invention and stripped it of this philosophy, reducing it to mere utility. We have the drone, the guided missile, the Wi-Fi router, the smartphone. We have achieved the how of the teleautomaton, but we have lost the why. We use these miraculous invisible connections to send trivialities, cat videos, and hate speech. whereas Tesla envisioned a world brain that would uplift humanity, eliminate war, and spread knowledge instantaneously. The tragedy of the Teleautomaton is not that it failed, but that it succeeded in a world that was spiritually immature. We gave a loaded gun to a child. We possess the power of the gods, action at a distance, global communication, remote control of matter, but we wield it with the wisdom of cavemen. As we stand on the precipice of the age of true artificial intelligence, we are finally approaching the horizon Tesla saw in 1898. We are building the burrowing race of machines he predicted. These new automatons will not just be remote-controlled, they will be self-governing. They will derive their borrowed mind not from a single operator, but from the collective data of the entire human race, the cloud. This is the ultimate realization of Tesla's vision, a global mind regulating the physical labor of the planet. But the danger remains. Without the tuning, without the benevolent frequency that Tesla hoped to broadcast, will these machines resonate with creation or destruction? Will they be instruments of liberation, freeing us to pursue art and science, or will they be the agents of our obsolescence? The Teleautomaton was never just a boat. It was a prophecy cast in iron, floating in a tank of water, waiting for the future to arrive. It demonstrated that the boundary between the observer and the observed is permeable, that the space between us is not empty, and that energy and information are the fundamental currency of reality. Tesla showed us that with the right frequency, you can move the world without touching it. He handed us the keys to the universe, encoded in the logic of the tuned circuit. The question is no longer whether we can build the machines. The question is whether we can tune ourselves to a frequency high enough to control them wisely. We must conclude with a harsh reality rooted in the physics of entropy. A system that relies on external control is inherently fragile. If the coherent signal is interrupted by noise, or if the internal resonator loses its calibration due to thermal degradation, the system does not merely pause, it reverts to a state of maximum disorder. If the machine can possess a borrowed mind, tuned to the frequency of its creator, then what signal is your own mind currently amplifying, and who is holding the controller?